Hi, welcome to my initial review and product explanation of the RTU Mini Hitbox. I haven't seen a ton of content about this product on YouTube, so I wanted to share my thoughts and hopefully inform those of you that might be interested in purchasing this controller, and also those of you who are just interested in gauging the state of the all-button controller in 2023. So I'm going to call it an all-button controller rather than a hitbox or leverless controller, mainly because I think this is the most accurate way to define this type of controller, and also it doesn't rip off the original hitbox, which the RTU is not affiliated with at all. For those of you that are just here for the clicks, you'll have your own section at the end, but that'll have to do for now. So with all that out of the way, what is the RTU? It's an all-button fighting game controller that uses normal 3-pin mechanical switches that are directly mounted to the PCB. The mechanical switches are hot swappable without taking the controller apart, and the button plungers themselves are also very easily swappable. It does state that they are gamer finger style buttons or gamer finger plungers, but I am not sure whether or not these button tops or plungers themselves are truly manufactured by gamer fingers. The RTU is available from Sinoarcade.com, but it's also available on Amazon, and I purchased my controller on Amazon for $130 USD. Now, the version I bought came with MX Speed Silver switches and these clear button plungers, but I also purchased on my own Glorious Panda lubed switches, which I pretty much swapped in right away to my controller, so that's what's currently in here. To begin, I want to outline a few of the features that I found attractive about this controller and caused me to purchase it. After that, I want to give my initial thoughts after receiving the controller, and lastly finish up with some final thoughts about the state of the all-button controller market in 2023. Alright, let's jump into some close-ups and get right into it. Okay, so the main attraction for me to the RTU I've already mentioned, and that's the hot swappable full-size keyboard switches. Even among higher end controllers, including the Snackbox Micro and the original Hitbox itself, most really do not allow for these full-size keyboard switches and either use the Sanwa OBSF buttons or specific and oftentimes very limited selections of low-profile keyboard switches. The fully customizable, regular 3-pin design of these mechanical keyboard switches was a very attractive feature of this product. The next feature I really liked about the RTU Mini Hitbox was its use of the Raspberry Pi Pico with the GP2040 as the microcontroller chip. I wasn't super familiar with this chip, but after watching the FrankieJPlays review of the RTU versus the B1 PC, I was super impressed with the chip's developer and community support. So especially when buying a relatively unknown technology product that could honestly disappear from the market at any moment, having that extra community support, it was a super big plus for me. And then the last feature that really sold me on the RTU was its availability from Amazon. So that's a site where we know that purchases are protected, unlike some place like AliExpress or honestly even Sinoarcade. Amazon has a known history for granting refunds for products that show up damaged or not as expected. I was really just inclined to trust Amazon for this, and then also their shipping estimates as well, especially compared to other distributors that might not be based in North America. And also in terms of the shipping, it was about 7 to 8 days for me and actually did show up a bit early, so that was a nice plus. Okay, so with all of these attractions out of the way, let's move on to my thoughts about the actual controller. And so far for reference, I have played about 10 hours of Street Fighter 6 on my Xbox and as well as some Skullgirls on Steam with this controller. And for additional reference, this is my first all-button controller. So the build quality feels pretty good to me. The plastic rim kind of around this outside of the controller area does feel a little bit flimsy, but pretty much all of the other materials feel solid. The switches are easy to swap out if you have a switch puller, and I will show that later. The only other thing included in the box is this tiny Allen key that fits into the pins on the front of the controller, but as a word of caution, you will need a slightly larger Allen key to fit into the pins or the bolts on the back of the controller, and so I picked that up as an Allen key multi-tool at my local Home Depot. The last thing in the box is going to be just the USB-C to A cable. It also feels a bit cheap, but that's very easy to replace. I'm sure most people have one of these laying around their house at this point anyhow. Lastly, the connection, the USB-C connection on the top of the RTU doesn't feel the most stable and secure, so it did feel a little bit sketchy, kind of ripping the cable in and out of it, so I'm trying not to do that too many times, but so far I've had no issues at all. So in terms of overall design, I do appreciate the screen on the front of the controller. It will read your inputs in real time and show you where the buttons are being pressed. And so that makes troubleshooting the initial connection of the controller a breeze because it tells you what mode the controller is in. And then it also is helpful for understanding the actuation point of your switches when that light really goes on as you slowly depress the button. That can be useful just for, again, initial setup. Speaking of the screen, the controller can be set to PS3/PS4 mode, Nintendo Switch mode, or PC modes in terms of input. So that's all displayed once again on this screen right in the corner. That's configured by holding down a certain button as you plug the controller in. So I've gotten the controller to work on my Xbox Series by connecting it in PlayStation or Switch mode and then using my Brooks XB Wingman 2, I believe. I've also gotten the controller to work on a computer running Mac OS, and that was in Switch mode because Mac has native support for Nintendo Switch controllers. Lastly, I want to speak to the design and construction of the box itself. So the thick front plexiglass would lend itself very well to installing custom art. I considered actually just adding some stickers right under this thick plexi, which is easily removable with these pins. However, I decided to hold off on adding stickers because I did find a template online, and I'll link that in the description. It's on a Japanese website, so you'll need to translate that if you're English speaking or non-Japanese speaking, but there is a template for the exact dimensions of this box that you could use to add a custom art piece to it. And then the very last thing I just wanted to say before we jump to the final thoughts is the bottom of the controller as it came just had these metal ends of the pins, these kind of bolts that were really slippery on a hard surface. And so I just added these rubber bumpers to the bottom, which are taller than the bolts. So they're the ones that touch the table. And again, I just got those at Home Depot. There was a value pack, it was a few bucks, and you might even be able to get this for less. This is like a 36 pack, but I got the little bit thicker ones and the little bit wider, and it works absolutely perfectly when I put it down flat on a table, or sometimes even I put it on top of a hardcover book on my lap, because the book is a little bit of a better form factor to sit on my lap. This is a relatively small controller, but these rubber bumpers, it doesn't go anywhere. So I would highly advise doing that. Or maybe if you're waiting for your RTU to come in the mail, head over to Home Depot, grab that other Allen key, make sure you have a switch puller for the mechanical keys, and then grab a few of these rubber bumpers. And of course, make sure you have the right adapter depending on what system you're playing on. So before I share my final thoughts, I would like to say that I am relatively new to fighting games, and my only other experience has been with an Obsidian Pearl joystick style controller by Canva. So my immediate reaction to using the RTU was that all button controllers are vastly superior to somebody like me who doesn't have those, years or decades of muscle memory built up with a joystick, specifically an 8-way, directional joystick. With that said though, I am happy that I did play on the joystick for a few months before getting this controller, because ultimately the buttons here, especially laid out as they really are an abstraction of that 8-way design, and being able to have physically, move the joystick in different directions and really felt that did help me in terms of being able to visualize what I was doing with these buttons, especially since they're not laid out in an arrow key formation as, somebody like myself might even be used to. Now, I know that WASD style, arrow key style controllers are available, but that actually brings me to my last point, which is that before purchasing this controller, I was actually just looking to upgrade my Obsidian Pearl to have mechanical push buttons, because that's really all I wanted. But unfortunately, I really wasn't able to find a button option for my arcade stick that was in stock, ready to ship, and that fit the arcade stick itself. So craving that mechanical switch experience, I went in search of a controller that would support that feature. The fact of the matter is, while more and more controller options are becoming available, there's really not a wide variety of all-button controllers to choose from right now. Like I said, most all-button controllers do not offer full-size mechanical keyboard switches, and as far as I can tell, there are no high-end all-button controllers with this feature. For instance, the Razer Kitsune, which is coming out soon, uses proprietary low-profile keyboard switches, and the Victrix and original Hitbox both and the Victrix and original Hitbox, both very high-end controllers, use Sanwa OBSF buttons. I'm aware that the desire for full-size mechanical keyboard switches is a preference, but I truly believe that the demand is not currently being met in the market. If somebody wants to buy a very high-end all-button controller with mechanical switches, they really don't have an option to do that. And coming off of Evo and just seeing how popular these all-button controllers are, I'm just kind of surprised that there aren't more options. I'm gonna have all the links to the stores and information that I mentioned in the description, and then we're gonna end on some click-clack shots in the close-ups. Anyways, I'll leave it at that and wrap things up here. Let me know in the comments where you think the all-button controller market is headed, and if you think we're gonna have more options around this time next year. Hope this helped. Thanks for watching.